What's up everybody, Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have an album review for you. So one that was coming out on the week of the 24th of March that I have my eye on just because I've been a longtime fan of this band, and yeah, surprisingly it's a metalcore band. And yeah, I know we're kind of so-so on metalcore here, but honestly, I've been following this band for pretty much since the beginning of the career, and I kind of wanted to do a full-on review for one of their albums. So we are going to go over the latest album from August Burns Red, Death Below. Again, this comes on the 24th of March on Sharp Tone Records. This band formed in 2003 in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Pretty sure I know someone from there. This is their 10th full-length overall. Again, I have been a fan since their early albums, mainly Thrill Seeker and Messengers, but I was a big fan of Guardians and Leveler as well. I think these guys just write solid metalcore, and that is, I guess, what you could just call them. They are a straightforward metalcore band. Lots of melodic riffing, tons of breakdowns. This band loves a good fucking breakdown. I mean, in generalized terms, I guess I could say that if you're not familiar with this band, they're like As I Lay Dying with decidedly less steroids and attempted murder. Now, the thing I always liked about this band was just the flat-out heaviness. They kind of foregoed a lot of the big, power choruses. Like, I'm listening to Kill Switch Engage in the background right now, and there's some relevance to that. But how they always have giant soaring choruses. This band kind of avoided that for a long period of time and just went with just kind of clever ways to write breakdowns and sort of pivot off of fast, more melodic death metal inspired moments. And this band has been doing that for a long time and been kind of slowly integrating other elements. And I will say that this album opens up in rather surprising fashion. It starts with Premonition, which is essentially an intro track, but it's more of a build-up. Like, it starts off with clean guitars, they start layering it. It's almost more of like a post-metal sort of vibe in terms of all the layers coming in. It's more slow-paced. Then the vocals come in and it's more of a desperate spoken word, like a rallying cry. And as the vocals get more intense, so does the music behind it. It kind of wells up some emotion, and then you get into Cleansing, which explodes into black metal, like post-black metal. It's very atmospheric, it's blast beat driven. The vocals are decidedly more screamed rather than the, typical hardcore growl that their frontman has. It's more cold and desperate, and then it sort of pivots back and forth between that and these really cool syncopated breakdowns, which are a huge part of August Burns Red's sound. This song is huge, not only in terms of like all the different elements they incorporate into it. It's also like almost 8 minutes long, and they go through a lot of different stuff. Again, black metal, metalcore. There are some progressive flourishes to how they write the song. It has these very cool peaks and valleys in it. You have clean sections. You even have ghostly choirs towards the end. And it revisits a lot of cool stuff like the black metal sections, and even kind of adds to the breakdowns that repeated earlier, except adds a little bit more heft to them, or even leads. And I'll say the lead work on here is really solid, actually some of the best it's been. Generally with leads in this band, it's more or less something to accompany a breakdown, like they kind of just add it as a layer on top of all the syncopated chugging. Like, this band is very much built on staccato riffs. Not really an issue with that because they do it so well, and generally their breakdowns are pretty clever and the transitions are smooth and they maintain brutality. But here, doing some more, proggy stuff, it's kind of cool to hear them transition differently. And again, a lot more atmosphere and just sort of a proggier vibe to some of the tracks on here. Fool's Gold and the Bear Trap is almost kind of like a fun little bait and switch. It leads you in with softer melodies, very clean guitars, this really cool bass and drum driven breakdown. Like, rhythmically, I think this band has always been on point. Their breakdowns are fucking fun. And again, kind of clever. But this song sort of like builds up this sort of like calm, airy vibe all the way through almost half of the song until you hear some whispers, and then it explodes into, once again, I guess you could call it blackened metalcore. The riffs are cold, the screams are desperate, blast beats, it's very atmospheric, lots of ascending melodies though, so it kind of has a more bright feel to it versus being like cold and evil. I wouldn't say any of their stuff sounds evil. I mean, they are technically a Christian band. I mean, they don't identify as a Christian metal band, but all of them are Christians. So, kind of splitting hairs there. But in terms of like evil stuff, I really don't expect that from them. I do expect brutality and like flat out heaviness, but evil, I mean, probably not while Jesus is watching, because Jesus is always watching. And there are some really good aggressive numbers in here, namely Ancestry, Tightrope, and Backfire. Ancestry has some flat-out vicious, thrashy riffs. Again, the blast beats come back, but it's more of a like melodic death metal sort of drive to them. I mean, there's a lot of riffs on here that are definitely very similar to At the Gates, or like all the metalcore bands that worshipped At the Gates back in the mid-2000s. There were a lot of them. I mean, one that comes to mind is definitely Kill Switch Engage, and that is decidedly relevant because Jesse Leach is actually on this one and delivers a really killer chorus. And it's not necessarily like a very soft or anthemic chorus, like it's just a solid chorus. The song stays very heavy, very aggressive throughout. Same thing with Tightrope. But Tightrope actually employs another guest, Jason Richardson, on guitars, and man, that song is just loaded with some cool, flashy, shreddy guitars, but it's also, again, more aggressive, more driving. The breakdowns have a little bit more heft to them. It kind of starts off with like a slower groove with a cool lead melody on top, and then explodes into like a faster song. But towards the end is where you get this absolutely vicious, shreddy solo that is just fucking awesome. And Backfire pretty much does the same, except adds like almost an anthemic quality to it. Like it's a big mid-tempo drive. Like it's somewhere between that, you know, At the Gates, In Flames worship, but also like a little bit of Lamb of God. Kind of just, you know, a good fucking fist-pumping anthem. There's even some gang vocals towards the end. But this album also does atmosphere pretty well too, like the interlude Savink, which kind of caught me off guard. It's a kind of a proggier number. It's short. It's only like about 1:30. It's more or less a transitional track, but it's honestly really cool. It kind of shows off, again, that more proggy side. It's more clean guitars. It's kind of bass and drum driven, and there's a really cool melody to it. And the song The Abyss, which features JT Carvey from Era on it, a little bit more atmospheric, but it also kind of balances out the heavier breakdowns. Like you have this atmospheric guitar line that kind of goes through it, but it's, you know, kind of matched with these big syncopated chugs and more metalcore vocals. And even towards the end of it, kind of gets to a more like old school Meshuggah breakdown. Like it's a little bit sludgier, a little bit bendier, like kind of something you would hear on like Chaosphere. Much like all their albums, I would say this is a very emotionally driven album. Their lyrical themes generally are about more personal subjects. They've never been like a very preachy band at all, which I totally respect that, because that kind of gets annoying. But what they've always done really well is find a way to blend melody and aggression. There's a really good balance of that. And I think on here, I think the aggressive parts really stand out well. There's definitely more blast beats on here. And in terms of the melodic sections, they stand out because they're a little bit different. Again, you have like some more like black metal melodies. You have some more progressive metal melodies on here. And it's blended in their sound well overall. This doesn't sound like a band going through an identity crisis or trying to shift units by changing their style. It's still very recognizable as August Burns Red. It's just slightly different in spots. The production on here is really solid, pretty much what you would expect from modern metalcore. It's very slick, very polished, but it doesn't feel overproduced. Like there's not a lot of extra fucking sound effects and shit like that fucking Chelsea Grin album or that other Chelsea Grin album. Still not sure why there are two of those albums, but that's a different discussion. Now, I will say that this album does have some shortcomings. It is very front-loaded. In fact, pretty much the first 6 tracks, I would say, are the strongest material on the album. Once you get down to songs like Revival and Deadbolt, some of the luster starts to wear off. Revival feels very plain and very ordinary compared to the first 6 tracks on here. It just feels like a by-the-numbers metalcore song with like a little bit of like a Lamb of God influence. It kind of just comes off flat. Like, yeah, it's heavy, but there are heavier songs in here that do more with the riffs or the melodies or even just the song structure. This one just kind of feels like maybe a B-side from their earlier years. And Deadbolt is, you know, a decidedly energetic, aggressive song, but when it comes down to the chorus, well, it kind of misses. Clean vocals on here are really hit or miss. And generally when they hit, they're done by someone else other than the frontman. And it's not necessarily his voice, it's the overproduction on the clean vocals, especially on this chorus on Deadbolt. It sounds like a choir of Chester Benningtons, which that's not a dig against Chester Bennington. I thought he was a solid singer, but it sounds artificial. It sounds like it's layered to the point where it's just too much. It doesn't sound like a natural voice. And you compare that to, you know, Jesse Leach's part on here, he sounds very natural. It doesn't sound like they did much to his vocals at all. And those clean vocals do resurface on the last track, The Reckoning, which is another giant song, almost 8 minutes long. And it's not quite as good as the opener. Like, it starts off kind of like standard fare for August Burns Red. Like, you see an 8-minute song, you've heard the cleansing already if you've listened to this in order. You kind of expect this giant sort of proggy closer, and you do get that, but it really doesn't get very adventurous until about the 4-minute and 30 mark, where Spencer Chamberlain takes over the clean vocals of Under Oath and does a pretty good job. But again, it's when the clean vocals are done by the actual frontman of this band, like, they just don't sound very natural. And while I really like the flow of this album, especially in between tracks, there's generally some ambiance or like a melody that will carry over. It kind of weaves this album together really well. There is one, sort of jarring one between Civ Inc. and Dark Divide, where I feel like the melody that they're leading in with on Civ Inc. doesn't necessarily match up with the explosive energy that just kind of erupts on Dark Divide. Now, they do revisit that melody in the bridge, but it's really just kind of teased a little bit. Like, yeah, remember that melody you heard in the intro track there? Well, there it is again. And we're just gonna move into this next part here. It just feels like with the front half of this album, everything kind of lined up really well, and then once Revival hit, it isn't as though the wheels fell off, but it was kind of like that wonky fucking wheel in the shopping cart that you just stare at and just like, why are you not doing what the rest of the wheels are doing? This is bullshit. Get your shit together, wheel. That being said, though, overall, I like this. I thought this was pretty damn decent. I've been following this band for a while, and they've been a very, like, steadily evolving band in terms of their sound. Like, they are never going to abandon the core of their sound. Core. But I don't expect them to. And I like to hear that they're exploring different ideas and sort of opening up the playbook a bit and incorporating different styles in their overall style. So overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. This was, for the most part, really good. Even the songs that I thought were a little bit lackluster still had some good punch to them, some good urgency. The riff work on here is solid. Their breakdowns are clever, and they know how to pepper in memorable melodies. Maybe the back half of this album will grow on me a little bit more over time, but the front half of this is honestly where it's at. There's some really solid songwriting on here, and again, I think this band is just super consistent overall, and it's, again, good to hear them grow a little bit. Because, I mean, as much as I love breakdowns, you kind of need more than that, and they definitely delivered more in here. In fact, I was really surprised, and, well, I mean, kind of disappointed I didn't hear more stuff like The Cleansing, because that opening track is fucking fantastic. Like, that is something I think they should explore even more because they did it so well. But if you're a longtime fan of August Burns Red and you still love the old stuff and you like to hear like a lot of the stuff they've been doing here recently, you're going to get it all in here. This is a really solid album. If you're a longtime metalcore fan and for whatever reason you just didn't check out this band, check out this album. This is pretty damn good. So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. I also want to say I do have a poll going on there for the next states of metal. I picked out 5 states, so I need you guys to vote on that. Anyway, though, the link down below to Thralls of Metal will direct you to our Patreon. It also has our store. We will be reloading on merch once we get back from Denver Death Fest, which takes place April 20th through April 22nd in Denver, Colorado. Oh my God, that is coming up quickly. We have 28 death metal bands to watch and hang out with, and we're hoping you guys join us. If you want tickets, the link is down below. 3 days for $60, 2 days for $45, 1 day for $25. Come on out, hang out, bang your head, drink some beers. It'll be a good time. And of course, thank you all so much for liking, subscribing, following, all that shit. It means the fucking world to us. It is amazing to, again, see this channel grow. I know I say the same shit, but I feel like I have to because I do. We wouldn't have all this without you guys. So you're going to keep getting thanked, whether you like it or not. So one more thank you, because I'm awkward like that, and we will catch you later.